You see the depths of my soul and said I'll be okay. Okay. Can we really start again? Cause it's blood on stain running away. And I lost so much time. And you saw me standing in way. What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Secure Show Live, where we are answering the question, is this anxiety or intuition? So as you're jumping in, be sure to drop your life satisfaction rate on a scale of 1 to 10. Happy Thursday to you. And where are you watching from? This is about to be real quick. I'm in and out. I got a call I got to get ready for. But I want to get this over to you because I think this is really important in your process of being a high achiever, but also trying to build a secure rhythm in your relationships and relational discernment. I just got back from the gym. I'm over here dropping grapes. My legs weak, arms heavy. Can we start again? Ain't that what he said? Can we start again? All right. As people are filing in from every which direction, okay? Again, be sure to okay, hold up. I got this ad playing. All right. So we're diving into this. Welcome in, everybody. Again, if you're new, my name is Coach Sean. I'm a faith-based relationship coach who is here to help you build relational discernment. High achievers build relational discernment to invest in relationships worth protecting. And one of the things that is important to talk about is just knowing the difference between is it intuition or anxiety. So I just want to dive into this. I got 30 minutes and we're going to be in and out. What's happening, Simon? Good to see you in the YouTube chat. How you living? Welcome in, Nothing, in the TikTok chat. Yanni in the TikTok chat. How you living? Good to see you. All right, so we're going to dive right into this. And again, the stream replay will be available. So if you miss anything, be sure to watch that. It's over on my YouTube and it'll be uploaded within 24 hours. Okay. One of the biggest things that you have to understand when it comes to building relational discernment is realizing that not everything that you consider intuition is actually a healthy differentiation. Okay. Actually, not everything that you consider to be your gut feeling is worth trusting. Okay. That's like the first thing that you have to understand. And when in this conversation of intuition versus anxiety, and we're going to spend some time differentiating the two so you can actually walk away with something tangible. Simon, I'm doing well. How are you, man? Life satisfaction rate on a scale of 1 to 10. How you living? How you feeling? But this is really helping us see that not everything that we consider a gut feeling is to be trusted. Okay. And not everything that we consider to be, just something is off, something is telling me something is wrong, means that something is actually wrong. We have to learn to differentiate the two so we can actually have healthier decision making in our relationships. Okay. And so the first thing that you have to understand when it comes to intuition versus anxiety is actually understanding what both of them are at their core. Okay. So when we're talking about intuition, most women and people refer to intuition as a gut feeling. Okay. I just got a gut feeling that something is off. I just got a gut feeling that something I'm in, something I'm seeing is not right. All right. And what we're typically labeling that, all right, you might say, the energy is off. I noticed the mood change. Okay. You notice body language, verbiage, tone, okay, that shifts. And so what we do is we look at that and we say, okay, something is off. My intuition senses are tingling. All right. And what's interesting, without going so deep into psychological scientific backgrounds, is understanding that our bodies have a way of adjusting, okay, and really alerting certain things that maybe are a reflection of previous experiences that we've had. All right. And it's just simply going back to what it's familiar with, not because something in front of us is actually wrong. All right. But typically, when we're talking about this gut feeling, all right, it's maybe a word interoception. Interoception is kind of how I pronounce it. All right. But again, it's the nervous system sensing, interpreting, and integrating of signals originating inside the body. So those signals contribute to emotions, urges, feelings, decision making. Okay. All the things that you might say are a sign of a gut feeling issue and situation. Something is off, something isn't right, something isn't aligned. Okay. And so, even from a deeper scientific aspect and even argument, okay, you can actually see how previous emotional experiences can play a role in what we'll label as intuition or gut feelings. Okay. Because previous emotional experiences generate bodily signals. And then, obviously, these bodily signals translate into influence decisions. Sometimes, before you're even able to consciously decide why something feels right or wrong, you just kind of act and do. Okay. Can't put my finger on it. Something's off and it ain't right. Okay. And typically, from a, again, physiological scientific perspective, your brain has detected a pattern before maybe some reasoning can catch up. So your body is responding, emotions are responding, and maybe not necessarily your logic is fully caught up. Okay. So what is the difference then between the intuition, all right, and maybe what you'll label as anxiety? Because you could argue that anxiety sometimes does the same thing, right? There's a bodily signal, there is an emotion that's taking place, and I'm responding and reacting accordingly. My brain hasn't caught up. I can't put my finger on it. Something isn't right, but it's causing me to react and speed up. Okay, well, now let's actually differentiate the two. Okay, and this is how we're going to have to differentiate them, because there's 3 stages that we're going to go through that explains the differentiation between intuition and anxiety. Okay, but when we're talking about intuition, yes, the gut feeling, something's off. Okay, can't quite put my finger on it. It's a reflection of a past emotional experience, and before my logic and reasoning can catch up, you know, I'm just on unshaky grounds, okay, or unstable grounds. When we're talking about anxiety, anxiety is the root of fear, or the root of anxiety is fear, rather, right? Anxiety is easily something that is constantly causing you to create solutions, to hurry to destinations, and is causing you to live reactively based off of emotional senses and signals only. Okay? When we're talking about anxiety, we're simply trying to control something we can't. And so we're hurrying, trying to find solutions, needing answers, clinging to certainty. Okay? So intuition is something's off, I can't put my finger on it. Anxiety is all about fear that pushes you to get an answer and solve. Okay? And anxiety will easily cause you to react, hurry, rush, and make emotionally led decisions based off circumstances and situations that have been created in your mind that aren't even in your reality currently. Okay? So when we talk about the difference between the two, obviously outside of that specific definition or those custom perspectives of the two, all right? Here's what's interesting. Both intuition, this is what makes them common. Both intuition and anxiety can speak through your body, okay? Both of them can create a feeling, and both of them can create an emotional, or not just an emotional decision, both of them can be an influence to your decision making, okay? So both have a feeling, both can speak through your body, and both can make a decision, okay? So it's not necessarily a matter of, is it a feeling or am I feeling something right or wrong? It's what are we interpreting? What is the meaning that we're attributing to the decision we know we need to make? Okay? Because here's the big reality that we have to catch, is that intelligence doesn't necessarily protect you, okay, from emotional reasoning. It doesn't protect you from responding or reacting emotionally. All right? Just because you're smart, you have a lot of degrees, you have a lot of success, you have a lot of other areas in your life that are on the up and up, doesn't necessarily mean that you are incapable of making emotionally led decisions. Okay. It's just that what we have to catch is the sophisticated arguments that you create around the conclusion that you've made this far. And instead of constantly going down that rabbit hole, we check it and reverse engineer it. Because typically that's what anxiety can lead us to do, that will conflate as intuition. Okay, your anxiety will cause you to believe that because of a delayed text means they don't like you, they're not interested, they don't care. Your anxiety will convince you that, again, 24 hours without talking and you just met them means that they don't, they're into somebody else, they don't care. So it causes you to do one of two things: perform, hurry, cling, over identify, take it personal, over apologize. Okay. Or you'll call it intuition, something's off, he must have somebody else. And so again, you'll call it intuition, but it's really anxiety, and it'll cause you to be reactive in a whole nother opposite direction. And that's to what? Ghost, leave, separate, self-sabotage, maybe reclaim to your successes in earlier areas and other areas, and over-identify with that. Okay. So here's what we have to realize when it comes to intuition and anxiety, and making sure that this conversation is maximized to the best of its abilities. Okay, again, stream replay will be up on YouTube, so if you miss anything, be sure to rewatch that. All right, so this is how we're going to have to define or give and paint the perspective of intuition in 3 different layers. Okay, this is really, really important. Okay, in 3 different layers. So the first layer is psychological. Okay, the first layer of intuition is psychological. Okay, and from a psychological angle, all right, intuition is rapid judgment occurring without a deliberate analytical reasoning. Okay, so for example, you've heard or maybe have said something like, I just know. There's no reasoning, there's no explanation, you just know. Something's off. How do you know? I just know. Okay. And just because you know doesn't necessarily mean you know accurately, but this is the explanation that you give. And this is huge for relationships. Okay. Because in relationships, you can easily come to a conclusion that you just know something's wrong. You just know something's off. Okay. But you have no explanation for it. So it's just all coming from created places, not from the realities that you're in front of. Okay. So intuition does become more trustworthy, okay, when someone has had repeated exposure to a reasonably predictable environment and opportunities to learn its patterns. Okay, so just because you're confident in it doesn't mean it's accurate. Okay, but at the same time, when you talk about the development of intuition and how your intuition can sometimes grow, it's when you constantly see the same situation or similar situations, you've been exposed to predictable environments, and you've learned the patterns. So for example, if you've been into plenty of sceneries at parties, bars, at maybe external situations, just throwing some examples out there. Okay. You've been to enough places where you realize when you hear a certain language, something about to pop off. Okay. Have you seen those videos that trend and people are talking about, man, when you hear somebody say, I just need a signal to know that we probably should leave. This probably ain't the place that we need to be. And you'll go to a party and you'll hear somebody say, hey, I'm about to set it off, or something crazy, right? Stay right there. I'll be right back. And it's in a very derogatory, loud, what do you call it? I'm trying to find the words, but I'm going fast. So it's in a very loud, derogatory manner. Then what happens is you've been into enough of those situations. You don't need to wonder. You don't need to guess. You need to be like, what's happening over there? You've seen this happen time and time again. You've seen this happen time and time again. So now because of those situations and you've predicted the patterns, your brain is automatically going to go to, oh man, something's about to get set off. We need to get out of here. Right? And so this is one example of many. All right. If you consistently walk into your house at 5 p.m. and dinner is being cooked, or you're used to dinner being cooked, then you're coming in at 5 p.m. and in the event that dinner isn't being cooked, you're thinking something's wrong and something's off, because you've grown in a predictable environment, consistently knowing the patterns, where every day at 5 o'clock you walk in the door, food is being made. So in the event that food isn't being made, we're like, something don't feel right. Somebody's not home, somebody's late. Okay, that's a softer example. But hopefully you're getting the point. Me asked, so what if the situation is similar, but the prediction is wrong due to past trauma? We're going to get to that because this is why we have to know the difference between intuition and anxiety, because initially that's anxiety in a situation like that, right? It's a similar situation, but the prediction is wrong because the past trauma, our bodies are still, healing from those particular predicaments that we found ourselves in previously, that we were able to predict with a specific person that we can't take to another person because they're not him, they're not her, right? So we have to catch these, and I'm going to show you by the end of this why this is important. Okay, but that's a psychological perspective. Psychology is like, hey, I've seen this multiple times, so I know what's to come. All right, that's one way to define intuition: rapid judgment without analytical reasoning. Okay, so before I get to the place of actually adding some reason and logic and understanding the context to things, my body is already reacting. Okay, I just know something's off, but knowing isn't the same thing as knowing accurately, because you can say you know something confidently, speak loudly, all the things, and still be wrong. And that kind of goes to what you were mentioning me about the trauma. Okay, so then this is the second aspect to intuition. This is a second layer. So there's psychological, that you could easily say is mental and emotional. Okay, mental and emotional aspects to intuition: rapid judgment, lack of reasoning. Physiological is more of the body. Okay, so this is where we're allowed to perceive internal bodily information: heartbeats, nausea, heart races. Okay, your breathing is off, you're panting. All right, visceral sensations, all the things that interacts with your emotions. So you'll say things like your chest is tightening. Okay, your body doesn't like him, your body doesn't like her. All right, taking you back to previous experiences, relationships that didn't go right. Right, I just felt something. It's a knot in my stomach. I don't know why, but my shoulders are just crazily tight. Okay, so again, we're not denying those sensations, they're very real. Okay, however, we still have to use those physiological layers as interpretive opportunities. Just because your chest is tightening doesn't automatically mean that something is off or you don't need to be in a particular environment. Again, you'll probably hear this all over social media: signs that, this relationship is good, healthy, green flags, all the things. But what many people fail to realize is that if you've been operating in trauma, fear, and all these other areas in your life for so long, you can't go and just take that type of advice and then apply it to a relationship you're in that doesn't even reflect those things. That's how you end up confused. That's how you end up self-sabotaging. That's how you end up, not really being able to be present enough for the connection that you're trying to build. So we have to differentiate the two so that way we're not just reacting based off of experiences. Okay? Yeah, so from my previous relationships, that meant not interested. I'm glad okay. Sounds like you're catching on me. This is making sense. Okay? So yeah, we're at it. So remember, in any given moment, okay, in any given moment, even from a psychological aspect, when there's an emotional pain that's experienced, regardless of where this emotional pain hits, physical or emotional pain, there is typically a meaning that will attribute in that very moment. And what happens is if we attribute a specific meaning to an experience we had as a means to rationalize it, process it, the things that we do naturally as human beings, the more that we rehearse that story, the more that becomes more real and more real, more true to our bodies and to our nervous systems. So then when we experience something that has similar outlooks, but different meanings, different backgrounds, different contexts, we're thrown for a loop. And it's easy to just go off of what we told ourselves and what we rehearsed versus what's in front of us. Okay? This is how you have somebody who has probably in one way or another been in previous experiences and relationships where raising voices meant that they were on the brink of experiencing an abusive interaction. Okay? And then when they are in a healthy relationship and there are voices being raised, she's automatically, or he's automatically, right, going to defend themselves, protect themselves, shut down. Okay? They're going into kicking into survival mode. But that's not because this person that they're now in a healthy relationship is going to do what the person before them did. It's just what their bodies are preparing for because it's what they're used to. So all of these physiological signs that give us something is going to happen. And so then we'll call it intuition. Maybe for some of us, we'll call it discernment. But that's just your body still recovering from previous experiences that you've had. And so that's why it's important that we can't just run with the physiological or the psychological immediately. There has to be a process where we can be aware of these things and not allow it to lead the decision that's in front of us. We're still on to intuition, y'all. Mental and emotional. Okay? And now physiological. Mental, emotional, bodily. Mental, emotional, or mental, emotional, physical. You can put it that way. Mental, emotional, physical. Not in that order. We're not trying to say your healing happens in that order or anything like that. We're just noting these patterns. From mental and emotional, okay, there's no logical reasoning behind a conclusion we're coming to. I just know, and we leave it at that. Okay? Then we have physiological, where we have a lot of sensations that are happening in the body. So there's the language of something in my chest, something in my stomach. My body doesn't like him. My body isn't safe with him. I'm not relaxed with him, all the things. And yet we still have to interpret the meaning and the exam that needs the examination. The meaning still needs studying. The meaning still needs studying. Just because you have a feeling in your body come up and you're immediately wanting to say you just know, that does not mean intuition has kicked in. We still have to examine. So what's another layer that we have to examine? And this is one that many people don't talk about, but I'll talk about it. It's the spiritual aspect. So there's a psychological, there's physiological, and then there's spiritual. And this is where I'm probably going to lose a lot of you, because real talk, when it comes to dealing with your intuition in a lot of ways is more of a spiritual component. There is a spiritual component. Remember, y'all, we are spiritual beings having human experiences. This is a spiritual component that is present. And anytime a spiritual component is present, no, that doesn't necessarily mean that dark forces are happening around us that we can't see all the time. This doesn't mean all the deepest things that we might hear from a spiritual lens in this conversation. What it means is that sometimes the answer to deal with said spiritual component, that being intuition, and trying to figure it out, is not by hurrying, creating solutions, rushing, problem solving, performing. Actually, it's doing one of the greatest things you could do in the event where we are unsure and we feel that our intuition is sensing. It's being still, which a lot of us have yet to really master, practice, put into practice, because we live in a culture where everybody is hurrying and trying to perform, trying to get to places, status changes, mountains, all these things. And one of the greatest wins that you can actually grow in when it comes to learning the difference between intuition and anxiety, which I'm kind of spoiling the ending here in a way, but one of the applications is to be still. Sometimes when something is off spiritually, and even if it makes sense mentally and emotionally, your response shouldn't be to then just go and do. It should be to remain still, remain where you are. Because alignment is necessary for intuition to be trusted. In order for intuition to be trusted, alignment must be present mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And when there's lack of alignment mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, what you're calling intuition very well could be anxiety. Because our mind is thinking one thing, our emotions are going another direction, and our spirits are unsettled. Okay? And this is really, really important. Really, really important. Okay? So here's what we want to really understand. Okay? From everything that we just described. What's up, Jude? Good to see you, and you too. Okay? This is really what we want to understand. Science does give you language for the body and the brain. Okay? It does give you language for the body and the brain, the psychological and physiological. The spiritual component actually gives another language, and that's discernment. Right? And so instead of, again, intuition can be the same as discernment, can be the same as, all these other things, again, but it comes from a healed, whole, aligned place. Okay? It's not necessarily to say that every internal knowing is neurological. Okay? But it's also not necessarily calling things or everything spiritual in order to exempt you from examination. So although not everything that happens internally, or not every knowing that we come to a conclusion on internally, is neurological, It's proven scientifically. It has all the things. We're also not going to go on the other extreme to call everything spiritual to exempt you from examining something. Because this is something that a lot of people do, especially to my believers. Okay, we get into this habit where when we label something as spiritual, we feel like it is exempt from simply examining. Let's come to let's actually look at this from a reasonable place. Not everything is needing answers from a reasonable place. Not everything is reasoned. Not everything is fitting into a logical box. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't stay curious enough to say what else could be here. And when we label everything spiritual, we give ourselves a room and opportunity to not investigate. We just throw it up to God and we wipe our hands clean as if there's nothing for us to think on, reflect on, especially in our immediate circumference. Okay, so here's the danger in the conflating intuition and anxiety is, especially from a spiritual component, you'll call a gut feeling God's spirit. This is the Holy Spirit telling me something is off. And again, gut feeling equals the Holy Spirit. Gut feeling equals, but that's not always the case. And we have to be able to learn the difference so we don't call something that we're feeling of God when it isn't. Okay? Because what we don't realize is the same thing that you might be considering as a fear, as a gut feeling is actually conditioning, fear, trauma, all these other things that you have not actually dealt with, or at least you're still growing and healing through. Does the Holy Spirit feel the same every time? That's a great question. I think there is always oftentimes a tug. There's always oftentimes when the Holy Spirit is trying to get our attention. Okay, he does it through a variety of different ways. All right. But we do have to pay attention to navigating those differences intentionally. I think the more that this isn't even necessarily to put it into like a category of, hey, this is the Holy Spirit, this isn't. Okay, I think there are some clear differentiations that let us know what's closer. And one of the ways to do that is to read your word, study, okay, get familiar with how God speaks through his word. That's a phenomenal start. Okay, but I want you to also realize too that this is not necessarily a right or wrong, heaven or hell, law kind of conversation. I think this is more of, okay, as you grow and mature, we have to give ourselves time and space to be able to mature in our faith in God. And that comes with, getting some things wrong sometimes. There's going to be times in your growth where you're going to be like, I think this is God leading me in this direction. And then you go and it doesn't turn out to be him. That doesn't mean that we get to beat ourselves up and meet ourselves with shame and guilt because we got it wrong. We're still learning how to trust God's voice in our life. So let's be in that process of trusting God's voice in our life. It doesn't always look perfect, right? And we may bump our heads along the way, but that doesn't mean that we're not growing. And that doesn't mean God is angry. That doesn't mean that we need to meet ourselves with more judgment or that we're failing as his children. Okay? Just like God gives us the ability to develop in him, we have to give ourselves that same courtesy and freedom to be able to develop with God. And oftentimes it's not him that's in the way, it's us. And I'm going to leave that there. Instead of us feeling like it feels the same every time, I want you to be okay in the event that hey, I really do think this might be God. This may be what God is leading me. I think I could be wrong. And then you go and it turns out to be like that. Great. It doesn't. Man, okay, I'm still learning. And Lord, help me to open my eyes to see what you want me to see, that I can continue to grow in this discerning a little bit healthier. Okay. So I hope that made sense, me. I hope that did. But I want to come back to this, okay? Because again, we don't want to make every gut feeling to equal the Holy Spirit or God's Spirit, okay? Because what we're struggling with, okay, is that not every gut feeling is that, because fear, previous conditioning, attraction, projection, pattern recognition, they all can create similar internal sensations, okay? So if you do believe that something is spiritual discernment in any capacity, okay, it should actually cause you to be more interested in testing it, not less. It should put you in more interesting places of staying curious about what you're seeing and the evidence is behind it instead of less. Okay, so I got to wrap this up. Okay, and I really, really want to get y'all to this. All right, so here's what we have to realize. Intuition versus anxiety. I'm gonna give you these three things and I'm gone. Okay. So again, we talked about the intuition, rapid, often non-conscious pattern recognition. Something feels off, you can't explain it. Okay. Anxiety is oriented behind fear, scarcity, lack, intolerance, uncertainty, need for reassurance, fear of making the wrong decisions, previous painful experiences. Okay. And oftentimes creates conclusion about what the feeling means, fast and in a hurry. All right. So when we recognize the differences between the two, and we understood also that what you call a gut feeling, okay, is more so of a nervous system response. So heart rate, breathing, tensions, your body reacting before you can consciously articulate what's happening. Okay, you'll say something's changed, and you might be registering that to mean from different tones, less eye contact, reduced affection, okay, less initiation, a texting pattern that seems a little off. He texted twice yesterday, he didn't text today, something feels off, okay? We have to really understand, all right, that at the core of the difference between intuition and anxiety, what allows you to differentiate the two are these few things. Number one is honesty, okay? Number one is honesty. Instead of it just being honesty, let's just talk about self-awareness. Self-awareness, honesty about who you are, where you are, and what you're doing at any given stage. Not my own definition, but Dr. Zeb. Okay, why is honesty important in differentiating the difference between intuition and anxiety? Because we have to be honest about where we are, who we are, and what we're seeing. Without honesty, we will never actually get to the place of healthy intuition in our lives. We'll just constantly live by anxiety because we're living by something we created in our minds subconsciously that's ahead of us or that doesn't even match our current reality. Without us being honest about where we are, who we are, and what we're doing at any given moment, we will constantly live by anxiety that will hurry you, push you, rush you, and ultimately crush you. Without self-awareness, we can't get to this place of alignment. Without self-awareness and honesty about what we see, we can't get there. And we'll call it a gut feeling and we'll actually self-sabotage something that makes sense. Okay? Number one is self-awareness. We need that. Okay? The second thing that we need, all right, is alignment. Okay? We need alignment. Alignment is actually where you're actually experiencing more intuition than you are anxiety. Because here's the thing, y'all, anxiety pushes you out of it. Because it's constantly having in the background of your mind what the uncertainty that you don't have an answer to. What happens in the event that this person walks away and no longer wants me? What happens in the event that this relationship no longer stands? What happens in the event that I choose wrong and now I look silly, I look foolish, I look dumb, all the questions that run in your mind. What's happening, Ash? Good to see you. Okay, all those things that rehearse and bubble up in you is more anxiety-centered than it is intuition-centered. Because we're focused more on lack instead of fullness and abundance. Okay? When you get into alignment, this allows you to understand and know what you value and what you require. And the question completely flips. Because anxiety asks, will he choose me? Will they choose me? Will she choose me? Okay. Alignment asks, is what I'm experiencing aligned with the relationship I'm trying to build? There's a different level of confidence. There's a different level of alignment. There's a different level of, ability to recover, trusting what you see. Intuition is oftentimes reflecting the values you carry that says you want to be aligned in these things to have the relationship you want. If I were to go further into defining alignment, I would go alignment in words, thoughts, and deeds. Words, thoughts, and actions. Okay? So you can't say that it's your intuition when you say you want peace, and yet your actions say you want and like toxicity. And then come around and say, I think my intuition is off. No, that's actually created anxiety because you're not living in alignment. You're not doing what you say you'd rather do. Words and actions don't mix well and don't come together. So we have to be able to live in this place of alignment if we really want to exercise intuition fully. Okay? Alignment in words, thoughts, and actions. Do my words match my actions? Do my actions match my words? Do I do what I say I'm going to do? Am I becoming who I say I want to be? Does this relationship align with what I said I value in relationships? Okay? So we have alignment, self-awareness, all right? And even to a point, you can also ask in these questions regarding self-awareness. Self-awareness isn't, yes, it's honesty about who you are, where you are, and what you're doing at any given moment. Okay. Here's some questions to ask in the moment that you're experiencing this differentiation. You're like, man, I don't know if this is my intuition or my anxiety kicking in. Okay. Well, one, let's be honest about what happened. Let's be honest about what you felt. And then I want you to be honest about the story that you told yourself too. Because there was a story that you immediately clinged to that experience that may not necessarily be a reflection of what's happening. What is the story that you created? Okay. Here's a fourth question. Have you felt this before? If so, where? And what does this situation remind you of? Do you notice how we're going through layers and levels of this reflection here? It's important that we do this so that we aren't just reacting, but we're actually making discerned decisions. Okay? Here's another great question. Is this person causing this feeling, or is this reminding me of something from previous places, people, experiences? Am I responding to this person or something this situation represents? Okay? Really, 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 really important. So when you have self-awareness and you have alignment, the third and final thing that we need to actually rest in is this level of abundance. And abundance definitely goes a lot deeper than just believing there's plenty of men, there's plenty of fish in the sea. I'll get another one. If I don't have you, I'll have more. Okay. Abundance is actually a reflection of your ability to recover from unfavorable outcomes. This is you focusing on gratitude. This is you focusing on the aspect of you being full regardless. You don't need this relationship, this person, this experience, this circumstance to go the way that you want it to go to be okay. Because your worth, your value, your identity was never put in the hands of something outside of you to define you. So I want to give you some language that's a reflection of some abundance. I trust my ability to recover from unfavorable outcomes. I'll have what I need when I need it. I'm full and I'm okay, regardless of the situation and circumstance. Okay. Scarcity says I need this to work. If this fails, it will never work for me. This is my last time and last attempt. And if this doesn't work, then I must not be meant for relationships and love. Scarcity will convince you to stay because you believe it doesn't get better than what you have, and that what you're experiencing in toxic cycles is the best it'll be for you. I don't know. Scarcity often leads with statements like, I don't know, it's impossible, never, and always kind of language. Absolutes from moments that you're experiencing. Okay? Abundance can use the language saying, I want this to work, I want this relationship to work, and I don't need to distort reality to make it work. I don't need to lie to myself to make it work. I don't need to hide to make it work. Okay? And what we get a chance to do is actually see that intuition simply notices, pays attention, tolerates investigation, observes patterns, doesn't require a particular outcome, has the ability to say you don't know yet instead of needing an absolute answer immediately, and reflects the attitude of discernment, seeing what it is, calling a thing, and acting accordingly. Whereas anxiety often moves from predictions, needing certainty, immediate certainty, constantly looking through lenses of lack, interpret everything as something bad is happening, fills information gaps with your own stories, okay? And often desperately wants to avoid an outcome. And you'll know the difference between intuition and anxiety because anxiety begs for control. Anxiety often always begs for control. Without you having an answer, without you clinging to the outcome, without you white knuckling everything, that's the motive of anxiety. Third question is if you were able to have the relationship you wanted today, would it be sharing any room with anxiety, or not anxiety, with unhealed wounds or trauma? Babu, hope I'm saying that right. Okay. So we don't necessarily want to lean in with the direction that intuition is calm, anxiety is intense. And both of them can produce strong bodily responses. It's about the meaning and story that we're giving to what we're experiencing that either fits in the lane of intuition or fits in the lane of anxiety. Here's the beautiful thing about it. You get to choose. So anytime that you experience a sensation that is taking you back to a place, that has you second guessing something, that has you in this place of indecisiveness, you don't know, a lot of rush sensations, instead of rushing to conclusions, reactions, interpretations, we have to observe what is happening in the moment. What evidences do I have that supports the conclusion I want to jump to versus what the true conclusion is? What are the patterns? This is how we're exercising discernment, y'all. This is how we exercise discernment. Instead of just living reactively, we slow down. Okay? So if there's nothing else you get from this, intuition notices, pays attention, tolerates investigation, and leaves room for information while observing patterns. Anxiety predicts something bad is always happening, using absolutes always and never, searches for threats, and needs immediate certainty, looking for control. So you know you're operating in intuition when you are okay with the outcome regardless of where the outcome leads. If that means y'all get married, great. If that means you don't, great. If that means the relationship continues, great. If that means the relationship ends after this conversation, great. But so many of us are so lost in the sauce when it comes to fear, traumas, hurts, pains, we can't tell the difference. Because we're constantly trying to determine the difference by a feeling, not realizing that intuition and anxiety can give you, on the surface, similar feelings, similar sensations, similar bodily responses. It's the meaning, story, and interpretation we have to put ourselves in process of to determine, is this really anxiety, or is this really my intuition kicking in that's coming from a place of alignment, that's coming from a place of healthiness, that's coming from a place of whole and healed aspects. Okay? So before you ask yourself, well, I guess the next time you ask yourself, is it intuition or anxiety? Ask yourself, what are you observing? What are you seeing? What are the patterns? What are the evidences? And remember, anxiety gets you to jumping to conclusions and being reactive. Intuition gives you room and opportunity to seek out information, stay curious, be okay with I don't know, not need immediate answers, and being okay regardless of the outcome, which is literally at an identity level. Literally at an identity level. So if you really want to be able to get a clear differentiation between those two, what we have to do is do some work at the identity level. Nervous system, identity level. Because all these things have mental, emotional, and spiritual components. And if you don't actually deal with these things healthily, you will call anxiety God. And you will conflate the feeling you have in your body that's fearful as if it's God talking to you. And it's not, it's your anxiety. Because God doesn't speak in language that is centered on lack and fear and what you'll be without in the event that you miss out, that you no longer have. What if this is all I can have? That's you. And when we get into alignment, we can actually make healthier decisions. Alignment with what, coach? Our values, beliefs, when our words and actions are on the same page. Okay? Let me know if that made sense. Put a one in the chat if that made sense. I told you I was going to be quick. Let me know if that made sense. I can come back with a whole nother, like, deeper live. I know this was maybe a little rushed. I can revisit it and talk a little bit more about it, because I do think there's some deeper things to unpack. Okay? In regards to knowing the difference between intuition and anxiety. If you missed this and you need to be able to catch the replay, it is going to go up on my YouTube. All right, so be sure to subscribe. Be sure to follow over there so you can watch the replay. It'll be up in 24 hours. All right, because this is really, really important as we're building discernment in relationships. There are some emotions that can happen towards you, and just because it's a similar sensation doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same thing. Anxiety can cause you to have your heart racing, just like intuition can cause you to have your heart racing. Gut feeling, something is off, can't put my finger on it. Same thing with anxiety, that will convince you of that. What is the root of it? Anxiety is fear, intuition, stability. Interpretation, meaning, story, consistency, alignment. That is how we build this moving forward. Okay? I appreciate y'all for jumping in. It was a quick stream, but one that got to the point. If you have any questions, you want to learn more about this, be sure to hit me up. Send me a message over on my socials, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere else in between, YouTube. I appreciate you guys a ton for joining this live. Be sure to subscribe, like this live, share it to others who could use it and benefit from it. Okay? And again, this replay will be posted up on my YouTube for you to catch. It'll be re-uploaded in 24 hours, so be sure to check that out. And I'll be back with this more in depth. You'll see some more content floating around speaking to these things and why it's important to differentiate the two, and more importantly, how you can know if it's intuition or anxiety, which mainly comes from places of alignment, self-awareness, and abundance. Okay, when you make decisions from a place of abundance, those are decisions that you actually can genuinely trust more than decisions you make from lack, scarcity, fear, and unhealed wounds. Okay, and we'll catch up then. All right, I appreciate y'all a ton. Check out the content. New content's being uploaded, and I can't wait to see you in our next stream, next video, and all the things. Until then, be easy and be breezy. Peace. Take it easy.